Okay, so I decided to reply to Anekantavad's video, especially since his last comment and what he talks about in his video seems to be pretty much the same thing. His last comment, which I got notified of like two hours ago. I don't know if it's already there, but it wasn't there when I looked like an hour ago before. Um, and it reads, we have sexual organs and a reproductive system. Like our digestive systems and brains, we are going to use them. We're also going to do ethically questionable things to survive, like eat meat and pollute the planet. That's what we are. Basically, what he's saying is like, we are what we are, and why don't we just be what we are and not change anything about ourselves? But I guess I should quote some of him for better clarity.
You should be ashamed of yourselves simply for being what you are. I'll go through a quote, a quick one from his book. And quite apart from the case that he's making, look at the amount of guilt that he heaps onto his argument.
Well, here's your favorite guilt subject that that you brought up yourself, and you think that it refutes anything in the argument. You're saying that Benatar is either overtly or covertly is trying to guilt people into agreeing with him or whatever to make people feel guilty for some reason, right? And since this is the intent, or I don't know, maybe the unintended consequence, that the logic should be that it refutes what Benatar is saying. You're saying it with such intonation like, aha, that sentence provokes guilt in me. Therefore, what it says isn't true. How do you come to this conclusion? How do you reach this conclusion at all? It does not follow. It's like saying, okay, when I read about this report in newspaper, it provokes fear in me. Therefore, this report isn't true. It's nonsense. You know, what you feel about some issue, about some statement, doesn't have any effect on whether the statement is true or false.
Because I agree, we do infrequently contemplate the harms that await any newborn child, but maybe we are like that because that's not the way that our minds work. He could counter that with, well, then your mind should work that way. Guilt.
And what you're trying to do here, it just doesn't lead anywhere. It's a vacuum statement, so it provokes guilt in you. Now what? Now you're claiming it's not true? It is true, and it's provoked guilt in you? Okay, congratulations. It provokes guilt in you. Now what? What do you have to say about the arguments made? That you feel guilty? Okay, we already heard that. You want to talk about every fact in the universe and what emotions it provokes in you? Because that won't change a shit in the logical conclusions made. You have to refute. You don't refute philosophy with emotions.
We infrequently contemplate the harms that await the newborn child: pain, disappointment, anxiety, grief, and death. For any given child, we cannot predict what form these harms will take or how severe they will be, but we can be sure that at least some of them will occur. None of this befalls the non-existent. Only existers suffer harm. Now, think about this. We infrequently contemplate the harms that await any newborn child. Okay, let's take that statement at face value. Let's assume that it's true. The backhand to that is that we shouldn't infrequently contemplate the harms that await any newborn child. Guilt. That we should always have it on our minds, or at least more than we do. The sort of butterfly effect of anything that we ever do. This kind of guilting goes far beyond having babies, by the way. We infrequently contemplate the harms that await or the harms that are potentially caused by any action ever. And okay, we can either say that, okay, that statement is true, that we infrequently contemplate it, and we can go either way. We can say, yes, we infrequently contemplate that, but we should contemplate it more frequently than we do. We could think that, and that's sort of the implication in what he's saying. He's saying that it's bad that we infrequently contemplate the harms that await a newborn child, or at least that's assumed. How about we just read it this way? We infrequently contemplate the harms that await any newborn child, because that's the way we are put together. It is not in our mental makeup to think along those lines.
Okay, so what you're saying here is that we don't contemplate the harms of existence for our prospective children, and we shouldn't because that's who we are. So in this case, you are kind of look at the is ought problem. You know, you kind of trying to derive what ought to be from what is. You're saying this is how it is, and therefore this is how it ought to be. It's nonsense. It's a fallacy. Look it up. Also, just from the examples in our history, I mean, in the age of slavery, it probably was also very infrequently contemplated how harmful slavery is to the slaves. Probably was not because it's not in our mental makeup, it's just because this is the society they lived. This was the society they lived in. That they were born into this society. Everybody said that was normal that slave existed, and people routinely don't question normal things. It's only a very small fraction of people who bring up the issues, who think more about the existence than they just do existence, like feeling pleasure and pain and just being in their own little world. Some people derive pleasure from thinking, and it's those few people who, once in a few centuries or whatever, in a century, in decades, bring up some subjects, and then those subjects enter into the minds of the majority of people, and then they start frequently contemplating something. It was the same with slavery. It probably was the same in the Middle Ages, where it was perhaps very infrequently contemplated, why should we believe in God when we have no evidence for his existence? It was probably just the same case, and there were probably people like you living in those times saying, oh, it's probably just in our mental makeup to believe in God from the day we're born, and we never contemplate why we shouldn't believe in God, because this is who we are. We should believe in God every time, always, forever. Uh, Again, ought from is. Now, what you're basically claiming here is that um, our instincts, our primitive drives are what we are. We are our primitive instincts and our drives, but we're not our rationality that can help us control those drives and instincts and divert them in the proper direction and, control and manage them. And I don't see any logic in that. Why do you take and you list, even in your comment, you list sexual organs, reproductive system, our digestive system, and brains, and we are going to use them. You list actually the brains, but for some reason you omit that one of the function of our brain is to actually govern our instinct. Just because we have a digestive system, it doesn't mean that we eat everything and everyone whenever we want by doing whatever we have to satisfy our hunger here and now. That's not how it works. In many species, over and over, you see rape. It is perfectly natural. It has been with us, with humans, throughout the history. But today we have laws and we're trying to control it, and we don't just pat the rapers on the back saying, good job, you just being yourself, you followed your instincts, this is part of your mental makeup to be using people as means for your own sexual gratification without thinking of the consequences. This is not what we say, and I don't see why you would make an exception for the reproduction, why you would exempt reproduction from all other acts that affect, besides satisfying our own desires, affect other people. We are humans, we are the machine that changes over time. That's who we are. We're not just reproductive organs. And it's been demonstrated over and over by people today that they're capable and they are making a choice. Would you say that a woman sitting somewhere in Congo, for example, being very poor and knowing that she has very detrimental genetical diseases, who's thinking, my God, I really would like to become a mother. My biological clock is ticking, but my reason, my ratio says to me that we will just both be miserable. My child will be hungry, I will be hungry, my child will get sick, I will get sick because I won't be making much money and I will be spending more on the kids. So why do that? Maybe I shouldn't do that, even though I want to. My instincts say that I want to because I've never been a mother. I just want it for some reason. I don't know why. But I also understand that if I do that, there'll be negative consequences. Is she not being herself? I think she's being perfectly herself. She is a human being with brains, and she is utilizing her brains to calculate the future, to to save proof her future, and to think about the consequences. This is perfectly normal, and I don't see how you can make any objections to that, saying that's not who we are. So, to summarize, I would argue that we are totally being ourselves when we are relying on our reason, because after all, our reason is what makes us ourselves. What makes us Homo sapiens is our reason. This is our distinctive feature. This feature was absent, for example, or I mean, was rudimentary in our ancestors, or for example Homo erectus or somebody like that. But you wouldn't say that they are more ourselves than that we are today not ourselves, because we have developed something new. This is the process of evolution. We are the changing machines, the changing beings, and whatever we become becomes the new ourselves. So yeah, the change is sometimes painful and many people object to it every time in history, but change nevertheless is inevitable. Where it will lead, well, nobody knows, but we do change, and this constitutes, the change itself constitutes the part of ourselves, of who we are. And with this ridiculous guilt issue, I mean, we're not in a therapy club. If something makes you feel guilty, you can discuss it in a group therapy. But if you are trying to hold a philosophical discussion, you're not just reacting to a philosophical statement by sharing how it makes you feel. You either say, I don't have an opinion on it, or you agree with it, or you present your counter arguments. But sharing your emotions on it does nothing to it, does not refute it, only counter arguments refute it.